I want you to open up your Blender projects folder right now. How many files are sitting there from 3 months ago completely abandoned? The folder of dead projects is a rite of passage for a lot of environment artists. You get a brilliant idea for a moody, atmospheric scene, you open up a fresh viewport, you grind for hours, and then the motivation completely evaporates. You close Blender and you never open that project again. Today, we're breaking that specific cycle. I'm going to share 6 tips that help me go from finishing one render every few weeks, even every few months, to consistently pumping out cinematic environment art. And I'm going to show you how you can do exactly the same. So point number 1 being, your project scopes are most likely way too big. We all want to build a sprawling, massive, urban, abandoned, ruined city, right? The thing is, if you're a solo artist, massive scale will kill your projects and your motivation as well. The secret to finishing more art is by scoping down. So don't try to build the whole street. Instead, you can build a single hyper-focused doorway or an alleyway, for example. By suggesting things that are out of the frame, you imply there's a massive world just outside the camera. The viewer's brain will do the heavy lifting and imagine the rest of the scene. By scoping down, you get less geometry, faster renders, more dopamine, and your projects will actually be finished. The second reason your environments die in the crib is that you're raw dogging your scenes. You open Blender with a vague idea in your head, you start with a default cube, you delete it, and somewhere along the way you expect the masterpiece to just emerge. But if you want to become a quote-unquote successful artist, you need to plan. So before you even click the Blender icon, you need reference images, a rough composition sketch or an idea in your head, your basic assets lineup. You should basically treat your 3D scene like a real-world movie set. Directors don't build the brick walls while the actors are waiting around or shouting the lines. The directors actually prep everything beforehand. So gather your textures, your reference, and make the actual execution phase as frictionless as possible. By planning, you reduce so much headaches and motivation killers later on. Stop spending 3 hours trying to get the perfect brick textures to pop when it's going to be like 400 meters away from the camera and it's going to be covered in volumetric fog anyway. Because in the end, nobody cares really, and nobody's going to see those pixel perfect details when the camera is so far away. If the viewer isn't going to look directly at it, if it's not going to be the main prop, the hero prop, use a low poly asset, slap a basic material on it and move on. 80% of your energy should be strictly put on your focal point and your foreground. The background is just there to support the mood. And this brings us to the biggest time sink for people making environment art. I call it the Groundhog Day workflow. So imagine you're like me and you love creating these abandoned, brutalistic concrete environments. To actually make an environment like that look believable, it needs history. So I would need to add rust leaks, cracked plaster, dust, grime, all kinds of things. Now, creating all of this once is no problem, but imagine if I were to do this every single time I wanted to create a new scene. Spend a few hours on shaders, creating new assets, or spend some hours looking for photo decals. You get my point, it's going to take a lot of time. So if you are starting from scratch every single time, you're going to have a hard time finishing your renders and staying motivated, because sometimes all of this prep work can take hours or even days. And working like this is like being a traditional painter, but throwing away your paintbrushes and your paints and buying new ones every time you want to start a new canvas. You need a repeatable workflow that includes smart materials, reusable assets, and foremost, a kit-bashing mindset. Mastering these types of workflows is exactly why I built my course, Anatomy of Decay. It's a complete step-by-step roadmap designed specifically for environment artists who want to create stunning, decayed worlds without getting bogged down in the endless tutorial hell. I show you the exact workflows, asset strategies, and texturing pipelines I use to create daily cinematic renders. If you want to bypass the years of trial and error that I went through and fast-track your environment art, you can find the link to my course down in the description. But whether you're gonna build your own system or use mine, my biggest advice is to stop starting from absolute zero and always save everything you make and reuse them in projects later on. And this next tip might be controversial for some, but it works for me, and that's to get out of solid view as early as possible. Staring at gray, unlit geometry for 12 hours straight is a massive motivation killer for me because it feels like you're making zero progress. So I always try to introduce basic lighting, a primary atmosphere, and my main textures as early on in my process as possible. And seeing this sudden glimpse of what the final beautiful moody image could look like gives you that second wind you need to push through the ugly middle stage of a project. Because let's be honest, every environment looks like absolute absolute garbage before it looks amazing. Trust the process, dial in the lights and textures early, and keep your motivation alive. And finally, we have to talk about your hardware, because if your computer sounds like a jet engine every time you switch to cycles or even open up your scene, I promise you that's gonna drain your desire to work with 3D as a whole. Unless you have a very high-end computer, you will have to plan your 3D art around your limitations, your hardware limitations. And of course, this advice doesn't apply to everyone. There are people with crappy potato PCs making absolute crazy photorealistic renders. But for most of us, we're gonna lose motivation waiting minutes on end just to see how our shaded view looks like. So instead of trying to fight your hardware, lean into styles that look cool but render faster. So I'm talking about things like tight indoor compositions, maybe dark environments where some of the shadows hide the lack of detail, or be smart with the use of mist and fog to hide distant geometry or textures and stuff like that. So don't try to fight your hardware, design your art around it. So those were my 6 steps that helped me go from finishing renders every now and then to actually almost doing daily renders. I would love if you dropped a comment down below and show me how many unfinished projects you have, and let's see who has the biggest graveyard. If you want more honest and practical advice like this, especially when it comes to mastering environment art without the endless loop of burnout and tutorial hell, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next video.